Re:Zero, Side Story, The Dragon Nation, Missing Child Search Chronicle 5, Chapter 1.
Deodora Rigundra was the daughter of a wealthy, distinguished family of merchants from Piktat. Born into a rich household and blessed with good looks, the girl grew in age as she did in selfishness. Whatever she wanted, she obtained, for nobody dared oppose one designated with her family's surname. Since she was a child, the circumstances gave leeway for her arrogance to thrive, supported by her lineage's power, which she, in her naivety, mistook for her own. Hence, Deodora went on without ever knowing any lack, until one day, past her 13th birthday, she experienced failure for the first time. She reached the stage where she began to acquire the features of a woman, along with a deep yearning for romance that she aimed to satisfy by using her beauty and status as weapons to conquer the opposite sex. For some time, it was almost regarded as a show to see her parading around the city, accompanied by her entourage of men. Deodora stood at her peak, no doubt. Until she tumbled in the most unexpected way. "Sorry, Deodora. I have some work to do at home. I'm thankful for the offer, but maybe next time." Displaying a gentle yet mirthless smile, that man declined Deodora's invitation. She could not believe it. To Deodora, meeting a man who could reject her, losing the opportunity to obtain what she wanted, was like seeing thunder in a blue sky. She continued to ask him time after time, under the assumption that he had made a mistake, but the answer never changed. Eventually, the shame of those accumulated defeats opened a crack in Deodora's once perfect life. Desperate to fill up that crack, she committed herself to obscure her defeats with victories. With the presence of 100 who adored her, she obscured her obsession with the one who rejected her. But while she repeated that cycle, sometimes she would come to her senses. Would this end up filling the crack in her heart? Or was it just worsening it? Since she could not have what she wished for in earnest, she questioned the value of what she had in hand. Deodora ignored, defied, dismissed those laments of her inner voice, and so she kept walking down this strenuous, thorny path. Looks like you're the 8th guy she's been with. And then came her second failure, wreaked by the younger brother of the same man who had jilted her.
Chapter 2.
So that man is back in the city? A manservant entered the mansion and gave a report that sullied Deodora's gorgeous profile with sourness. Several years had passed since that disgraceful ice season, so she thought that the damage was repaired. However, the moment she heard his name, she felt blood gushing from the same wound that she thought healed. The blood's vivid color and smell forced her to remember that nothing had ended yet. Well, it's been 6 years since that. Putting a hand on her chamber's window, Deodora reminisced upon that dreadful day from the past. During that one ice season, an unusual cold wave had assailed the south of the kingdom, and thereby Piktat. Thanks to the gelid atmosphere, she had more time than usual to revel in interaction with the opposite sex. Deodora longed for affection, but a certain man had misjudged that as the manifestation of a vile desire. That man's futile, pointless diligence had resulted in a quite indiscreet disclosure of Deodora's relationships, and thus many people being hurt, including the aforementioned. Therefore, she had decided to eliminate the cause itself. He was lucky to have escaped just before she could complete the task. If only he had never come back, I'd have turned a blind eye. What a stupid man. Had he absconded and accepted that he would be forbidden to set foot in his hometown again, she would have exonerated him. But instead, the man had returned to Piktat, almost as if he believed that he was welcome. In doing so, he had re-established their unsettled debt. And she was determined to collect her payment. Listen here. Call the mercenaries of this city. Get in contact with anyone who's interested in earning my favor or the Rigundra families. Now, at last, that man will. Excuse me, milady, that'll have to wait. What? We don't have all day. That man can get away any moment now. Seriously, he's as repulsive as those Zodda bugs. The opportunity for revenge had appeared, and Deodora was very eager to seize it. Her reprimand towards the manservant clarified that she would tolerate no hindrances. However, W, what was that? Who screamed? All of a sudden, a hoarse scream blared outside the room, from downstairs, and astonished Deodora. To complement her surprise, the manservant at her side jerked his shoulders up, his countenance tense as well. Please listen. We have trouble, milady. There are some visitors claiming to be allied with the one you despise, allies of that man. What does that have to do with? Arg, out of my way. Irked at the manservant's incoherence, Deodora pushed the scrawny man's chest away and exited the room in a hurry. When she espied the entrance hall on the ground floor, her eyes widened. There she found the Rigundra family's sturdy security guard facing a visitor. RGH. You go, quit kicking up such a fuss. I'm tellin' ya, we ain't here to pick a fight. And there she saw him shaking his legs midair as he struggled, with all his might, to release his chin from his opponent's grip. The perpetrator was a boorish, golden-haired man, almost 2 heads shorter than the hefty guard. Said man's companion, a woman who was holding her own elbows, took a glance upstairs. The woman, characterized by a maid uniform and pink hair, met Deodora's eyes with her own. You have guests. That greeting, straightforward and impolite to the fullest, marked the start of their affair.
Chapter 3.
Is this an attack against the Rigundra family? Aren't you aware of how big our household is? If there's something big here, it's your attitude. You're standing so firm now, you could almost fool me into thinking your knees weren't trembling when you saw Garth strike earlier. Silence, shout as she may at her, the pink-haired woman, named Ram, would still not cease her supercilious stance. Certainly, the scene in the hall had come as a shock. It was hard to believe that Gomuse, a guard with no merit other than his brawn, had been overpowered by somebody brawnier, and on top of it, sorry for what I did to that guy. I cast some heal-in magic on him, so let's just forget it happened, Garth, it's no use apologizing after you've done it. I'd feel bad asking for a favor that way. Grr. That somebody was the same youngster who now drooped his shoulders at a sermon from an even younger girl. What a strange combination you make. Deodora furrowed her brow at the odd visitors that had somehow ended up in her parlor. 2 maids and 1 man, a peculiar trio, had forced their way through the security and into the Rigundra house. The very haughty Ram, the youngster who had subdued Gomuse, and the girl who tamed that youngster, each of them spurred the mind into caution. Nevertheless, she could not afford to let the awe take the lead away from her. According to my manservant, you are all here to talk about a certain man, correct? It's a rather useless man we're dealing with, but since his little problem might turn into a bigger thorn in our sides, we can't ignore it. Ram nodded serenely when the manservant's report was mentioned. From her unaffected affirmation, it could be presumed that they were acquainted with the man in question, and perhaps had helped him return too. And while Deodora tried to pinpoint the motive behind their visit, sorry to interrupt. We're looking for someone important to us. A lovely girl, the youngest of the group, took Deodora out of her thoughts. Her name was Petra, and her round eyes shone with seriousness as she pleaded to Deodora. And to find him, we have no choice but to go through Pictat, what she said. So, Mom, we're gonna need your family. Or rather, cancel that one weird request you sent, please. The youngster, nicknamed Garth, complimented Petra's plead. Deodora watched Petra bow her head lower, then turned to look at Ram. There, on the sofa, sat the woman, no humility whatsoever in her posture. What? She narrowed her pink eyes. Ram won't say a word, no matter what face you make at her. At most, I can provide you with an insult, Sister Ram. Don't be like that. Let's ask her together. I know you care about Subaru and Rem as much as we do. Of course Rem has a place in my heart, but it's not big enough to fit Barusu in. Sister Ram. Blushing, Petra urged Ram, who, in response, sighed and faced Deodora again. I take it back. Ram will ask as well. Withdraw it, please. Withdraw the assassination order you placed against Otto Suwin. The moment that name came out of Ram's lips, Deodora's slanted eyes became sharper. That name belonged to the one who had cracked Deodora's life for the second time. No matter how much she tried to forget it, she could never. Must I? He'd be completely safe if he hadn't come here in the first place. Believe me, even he was reluctant. But necessity called, so he answered. That's the kind of man he is at heart, necessity. Is that so? Every single part of Ram's reply got under Deodora's skin. If that man did act out of necessity, Then, did that imply that shaming her had been necessary, too? He and his brother had done nothing but humiliate her, disgrace her. I deny it, Miss Deodora. Don't say that. Oh, no, I sure will. I couldn't care less what kind of life that man had outside this city. So he's grown into such a wonderful person? Well, good for him, Miss Deodora. I will never, ever, forget what he did to me. With the aftertaste of disgrace in her mouth, Deodora glared at the visitors and spoke up. That was her true intent, independent of the manservant, Gomuse, or the Rigundra family. When Ram heard those words, she lowered her gaze a little. Excuse us, huh? Hey, Ram, not yet. What are we gonna do about Otto, bro? We've tried everything. Ram doesn't want to give up, either. However, I've concluded that, this time, the problem is only Otto's. If we have to risk having him killed by an assassin, then we'd better leave him behind. What the hell are you talking about? Ain't that like you grease spinning plates? Ram shrugged and prepared to retreat from the place, despite Garf's insistence. Deodora, while dumbfounded, did not disagree with him. If they were going to retire so early, why had they even bothered visiting? At least, Deodora was relieved to see that Ram did not disregard her opinion. We're employees of Margrave Roswell L. Mathers. Mr. Otto works at his mansion along with us. Looking askance at Ram and Garf, Petra presented a shocking testimony. Deodora was struck with amazement and confusion, and at a loss for words, when she found out about their unlikely job. Petra, Ram intervened, narrowing her eyes. This is a wealthy household from Pictat. Lord Roswell's name shouldn't be used in such a... Sister Ram, you go way too easy on Master. Besides, I think that he asked me to go with you, precisely, so that I could do this. Ram endured Petra's rebuttal with uneasy silence. Once she blocked Ram's opposition, Petra continued talking to Deodora, whose mouth was also shut. Miss Deodora, I won't pretend I understand how you feel. But I do understand that Mr. Otto did something wrong. So, how about this? About what? I'll make myself responsible for bringing Mr. Otto here, so that he apologizes. You may do whatever you want to him. As long as it's not too harsh, but still, that'd help you get back at him. Deodora listened, wide-eyed, as Petra raised a finger and elaborated without hesitation. Who would have thought that a girl with a face and mannerisms so cute could say something so frightening? But the scariest thing was the proposal itself, because one would not think about broaching that unless they were aware of the cracks in Deodora's heart. Mr. Otto hurt you. And as a fellow woman, I get it. Since I've already mentioned our master's name, we could go over your head and solve this. But, honestly, I don't want to do that. She was searching for common ground, to satisfy her own worries and Deodora's feelings alike. In the end, Deodora would be obliged to withdraw the assassination order against Otto, regardless of her choice. And yet, she was being offered a chance to fill that crack. What do you think? Petra inquired with innocent eyes. The girl's prospects seemed bright to an eerie degree. Can you really do that? You bet I can. People at the mansion always listen to me, Petra boasted as she flexed her thin arm, a quite comforting gesture. Behind her, Garf could be seen with a grievous expression, proof of the disquiet surging inside his mind. Deodora placed a hand on her chest and thought about the invisible crack. May I ask just one question? Yes? After accepting her defeat, Deodora spoke in a mild tone, to which Petra tilted her head. Ram and Garf stayed at the back, waiting for Deodora to continue. In front of 3 different spectators, Deodora paused for a second, then opened her mouth. What's so good about that Zodabuggerer, anyway? As soon as she said that, Ram and Petra's visages twisted into displeased looks, much to Deodora's amusement.
Chapter 4.
Petra kept her promise to the very end. And very firmly at that. I am sincerely sorry for what I did that day. I was very immature at the time, but I have reflected a lot since then. Watching the man bow his head and apologize for that past humiliation, Deodora breathed out a long sigh. To hold a grudge against somebody for eternity would take its toll on her. Thus, it would be wiser to redirect that zeal and apply it in the search for her own happiness. Petra had taught her that. It was enviable that, when asked why she had come, the girl could answer, for someone important, with confidence. Just as enviable as being somebody whom that girl could cherish that way. As the second crack closed, Deodora mustered her courage once more. If you're really sorry, do me a little favor. Now, can you tell me what your brother, what Mr. Oslo likes? The same man who, years ago, had scurried away while on the brink of death was now before Deodora, eyes full of a lively blaze that incited her to tackle the first crack anew.